It's 6:30. I'd like to call to order the Dayton Park Commission meeting for December 5th at 6:30. If you please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is to approve our agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve as written?
I motion.
Second?
Thank you. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Consent agenda. On the consent agenda is the approval of the Park Commission meeting for November 7th. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
Thank you. In a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And so that passes. Move on to open forum. Anyone here for open forum today? With that said, we'll close open forum.
Is anybody online?
Zoom. Online.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't see anyone on here.
Ask them to use that hand wave.
No attendees?
Oh, no attendees.
Answers that question.
Apparently not then.
I've got to get used to that. Very good. We'll close open forum and move on to council update.
Good evening, commissioners. Through last week's council meeting, we posted for an assistant chief, posted for an EDA commissioner, and posted for 3 full-time. I know the packet said 2, but we ended up going with 3. We updated the commission's attendance to 75% throughout the year. I'm not 100% sure what the finite details of that. I had asked some questions that trying to get some clarity to some things, so I think coming back we'll have some more clarity on that. We did host a work session beforehand at 6 p.m. for the tobacco and cannabis use in public spaces, and then went to a public hearing shortly after the meeting started, and kind of had some discussion around cannabis use, what that looks like in the public spaces. It looks like it's going to follow some of the alcohol ordinances within the city, and tobacco was another one that was kind of brought up about what does that look like in public spaces. And if I could task the commission with something, I'd like them to look at what like cleanliness in the parks is around tobacco use, because I think right now we can use tobacco in the parks, and I'd like to kind of keep a clean image within our parks and our community, and giving people, if we're going to choose to let them smoke in our parks, giving them a spot to dispose of their stuff kind of makes sense to me. So maybe if the commission want to look at something like that. Moving on to action items, we had the Levy Street property purchase agreement approved, and plans to go out for some backup generators for fire stations 1, well house 2, and fire station City Hall here. And then we did a budget recap discussion, and then had a discussion about the repurpose of the tax forfeiture land over off of Territorial and Dayton Parkway, I believe. So, and that wraps that up. Any questions?
Yes, on the park cleanliness, you're asking that we address that?
Yeah, my thing is like if we're gonna allow, so this is my thought when I had this kind of when we were in the midst of the discussion, if we're allowing people to use tobacco, i.e. smoke cigarettes, vapes, or anything of the sort, I feel like we should at least try to do our best to try and keep our parks clean by allowing them like safe dispensers to put that like cigarette butts in rather than like trash cans. Try to mitigate things like that, because if we're going to allow it, then I would like them to have a spot to put it to kind of keep things clean in an effort to. Not saying everybody's going to be perfect, but I'd like to give the option versus just saying like just dispose of anywhere. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. Do we need to put that on?
I don't know. That was just something I figured if you guys wanted to discuss it. It's just kind of one of those. I had made a kind of a pitch to say like, I don't personally think that it should be there. I think if somebody's there with their children and somebody's being disruptive and they're smoking, I feel like we should have an ordinance in place that says like, hey, if you don't like that, or we don't approve of that, there should be some actionable course. So that is, like, if somebody calls the cops, like, hey, per our policy or per our ordinance, it says that you can't smoke in our public spaces. And I just wanted that to blanket it. But there's some pushback, so I said, my thought is like, if we're going to let them do that, then I feel like we should be able to give them the means to dispose of the cigarette butts or not even cigarette butts, I don't know, whatever else people dispose in those ashtrays or those stand-up columns, whatever. It's keeping it clean, keeping it in a spot where it can, snuff itself out, and it's not going to cause a fire hazard by somebody just dumping it in our trash cans, kind of thing.
So what do we need to do to get that on the agenda? Marty, do we?
You need to put it on the parks agenda? What?
To buy trash cans for cigarettes?
Yeah, whatever
Well,
those little smoker
what do we
station
do to
things are. I don't know.
To begin looking into the ramifications?
Discussion? I don't know. It was just a thought that I had, and I was just
sure.
like, hey, maybe I can just ask the parks what they would want to do with it and just kind of go from there. This is kind of where I was at with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what formal action you guys need to move forward with it, or you can just tell me to kick rocks. It's totally fine.
I think it's a great thing for us to maybe research on our own time, and at a future meeting we could have a discussion.
Yeah.
See if there's creative ways, or if we would just end up doing what you see downtown, a bin with a bucket in it.
Something.
So in a regular meeting, John has got a presentation.
Yes, thank you. Could you pull up my presentation, please? I'm just kidding. I don't have one. But no, I don't have a formal presentation, so this is more of an introduction. So I'm Jon Sevald. I'm the Community Development Director. I've been here for about 3 months now. So this is my first. Was I here? No, I was not here last Park Commission meeting.
I don't believe you were.
Was
Hanging
I?
around the door.
Probably just to see what you guys were doing. So, Doug, I've known for a few years. So I am a Dayton resident. I started out on the Park Commission some time ago, and then moved over to the Planning Commission, and then moved over on the staff side. So I've got some familiarity with Dayton and kind of where we are with parks and where we're going. But so I've got kind of a few things that I want to add or to kind of hit on. So with planning, and I guess kind of more of a conversation with the commission of what the commission's expectation is for community development staff and bring projects to the park commission. So with subdivisions by state statute, is the city can require developers to dedicate up to 10% of their land towards parks. What is more typical is that we would collect a fee rather than land dedication. So the land dedication in this next project is going to be a good example of it, where we're taking land dedication, but in most cases where we have a development, it doesn't always make sense to have a park there. It's just not part of our plan, and so that's why we take fees instead. Also land for trails. So, a question for the commission is, when would you like me to bring a project forward? Kind of what my recommendation is if it's obvious that we're not going to require a park land to be dedicated, that's not a project that I would bring to the commission. So I'm going to make an assumption that the commission would agree that we would take fees rather than land.
Depends if we need trails through it. Sorry to interrupt.
Trails, yes. I'm going to say trails that would run along roads are kind of. So the short answer is yes, I agree with you. So if we're thinking trail dedication, then we would bring that to the commission for input. Yeah, and I'm seeing some head nods. So that is the easy part. Part of one of the things that I want to work on, I know the commission as well as CDA has been after having athletic facilities or large community parks system, and so park planning is a passion of mine. That's something that I would like to get more involved with, whether it's through consultants and the commission and as well as the CDA, and I'm also going to say some of the other surrounding athletic organizations. but there's not just, there's more to parks than just sports. And so you think of, we have Ellie Stevens. Elsie Stevens. I always think I'm going to pronounce it one way and then I say it the other way. So Elsie Stevens is a very special park in Dayton, and if you look at other cities, it's a special park comparative to what you would see elsewhere. What else? What other opportunities are there in Dayton? So if Dayton is going to grow to 40 to 50,000 people, what are the other needs that are that we can try to predict? So having some idea of what we would like to see is kind of important to have now as we review developments. So if you think of, if it takes 50 years to build Dayton out, a lot of those decisions or big decisions or the framework for those decisions should happen now. So it's kind of, right now is the time to develop a roadmap of how do we want to grow over the next 50 years, because it's going to affect, many generations of the work that you're doing today. How am I doing?
You're doing good.
We're good. I feel like I'm skipping things. So I guess, yes. So I'm skipping things. A general question is, what are we missing for parks? I mean, things that you think staff should be thinking about. Kind of big picture items.
Is that a question, or is that like,
that's a question.
like
Yeah.
you want answers right now for that?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I think our urgent need right now is an athletic complex. After that, I think we should consider some natural areas. If you take a community like Maple Grove, with the gravel pits, they started their programs 50 and 60 years ago. And it's taken that long to develop into what it is today. And we have, through fits and starts, tried to initiate something, but it's always fallen short. I don't know that we have the Champlin Dayton Athletic Association, but we've got two more school districts that we have to consider, and how are we going to bring all three school districts together and make a concentrated effort to come up with something. But I think that is vitally important right now to us, is to communicate or to commit to a piece of land that is central in the city, that we can rely on and begin to plan around and develop.
Okay.
Yeah, I would echo that statement in the short term, and however short you want to make that window. But as an active user to the CD, what feels like CD, BPAA now, which it's supposed to be CDAA, I feel like they're, just for them to operate, to get us users in there, like I'm having to go out further and they're having to go out further just to make those accommodations, where I feel like Dayton has that availability around us right now to kind of, hey, in the next ever so forward many years, like we can kind of close that gap with Rogers, with Maple Grove, with Osseo and Champlin and Dayton. Like we can give them that kind of space to build that community aspect of it out with all the, whether they host tournaments between Rogers and Champlin or Rogers and Maple Grove, I feel like that is a leg of the piece that's been talked about for so long that definitely should come to fruition at some point in the short term. Long term, I like trail connections. I like the ability that, we're rural enough to the point where you can hop from development to development, and you can, keeping those trail connections through the city, and then the recreation connections as well. Like I like that aspect of too, keeping the Northwest Trails here and having that recreational piece still part of Dayton, because you can still go to Sherburne County and hit trails and trails and trails, and then go over to Corcoran and out that way and hit that area and go for miles and miles and miles. Availability for just that all those different dichotomy pieces that Dayton has to host and offer. like that's what drove me to kind of, be a part of it. So
So I get, and sorry to interrupt. So just to hit on that, so snowmobiling is not something that I'm very familiar with. Are there any, I'm going to call it permanent snowmobile trails?
I mean, yes, I would imagine like the Sioux Line Trail, things of that nature, where they've repurposed a large chunk of railroad bed or something like that. Things of that nature. If we can incorporate it into like right of way on, if we're doing boulevards and we keep enough right of way, like for instance the Power Line Trail, if we end up putting a road through there at some point or whatever that looks like, keeping enough space for, Pineview, for instance, if you take that sidewalk and we kept it, however, friendly for all users throughout the year, like there's enough space over there for that to happen. Albeit people got to be mindful of speeds within the city, but nonetheless it's like giving them the connection to go do those things. Like there's nothing I have more fun than taking Elliot out on the snowmobile and just hitting the 25 miles you can over in Elm Creek. Just it makes a night of it, and the ability to Saturday morning head on out and then be back Sunday. Those are the kind of things that if you could do that without having to trailer everywhere else, like that's the rec piece of it. But obviously that's just my portion. There are people that snowshoe that would love to use those trails in Elm Creek Park or the connectivity as well. Whatever else, I mean, make winter fun. Because otherwise you're just stuck in. You're stuck. It's dark early, whatever the case may be. But connectivity is kind of what I think is the main bridge that brings all that together. So
Okay.
I'd echo that trails piece.
Yeah.
And when the planning commission is planning for these build outs and everything, I mean, not just a trail on the side of the road. Right, make it interesting through the neighborhood. Weave it through where they're going to plant some trees and that kind of stuff versus right angles everywhere along the road when who knows what's going to happen, but it's not as safe as it could be.
Okay.
Is it done yet?
Is it,
he's looking for
I'm
ideas, and I'm
as we go.
You need to know. So
I'd echo what these folks have said. Big fan of trails connecting, especially biking around with my kids to not have to cross busy roads or to have dedicated space to ride is always great. And the community play field or whatever. I'd also more sort of activities put on by the city. Now that we have a coordinator here, I think that'd be really great to see. Things I can go to myself, take my kids to, etc. To utilize some of these spaces, get people out there outside of just your own initiative.
Good.
come on, Carrie. You're something in there. Come on.
I was going to say, you guys did good. That's what I was going to say. I like the natural areas. I know that parks are a huge thing, but once you get out of that age range, you still want to be able to get out and about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it would be, I would love to see more, even little. I know we have Elm Creek Nature Center. It would kind of be cool to have our own, it's right there, but I just don't think you can have enough.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I love walking along Cloquet down by the river and Gooden, it's nice to have those spaces, and Elm Creek's great, but we got a lot here in Dayton too.
How do you capture that rural feel then? Like to the point, like an aging, like you're out of the age bracket of having kids, but yet you still like to walk by the beans or the corn, and like maybe an aspect of capturing it that way too. Maybe that's like a farm preservation.
Well, yeah,
I don't know.
The Landscape Arboretum has the farm at the Arb, where they operate a farmstead. I mean, they had it all there already, but that'd be cool. Have Marty run a farm. No, but that's a really good idea. It is really cool to have that sort of space to.
If it's preservation of rural character, everybody's definition of rural character is different. But what is Dayton's rural character? When I see it, it's the farming community. It's what Dayton was about back in the day. All the trade that went on, and that's usually what with the product that they grew out of the ground. So it's like, how do you preserve that in a sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like what I always bring up at these meetings is I want to see more history preserved.
That's where I was going with that. It was like, how do you preserve Dayton's rich history?
Yeah.
I like it.
I don't know.
I like it. He's just looking for ideas.
Yeah. Good. What else?
Spaceships.
Spaceships?
I'm
Okay.
Rogers has some kind of natural trail through where the deer, the elk, not elk, but bears, apparently
never know.
cougars,
Moose. Yeah, there's
are
moose.
roaming through, more of a,
Are you talking about Henry's Woods? Like off of Brockton?
it's actually a preserved way for wildlife to travel through in and out versus riverbeds.
Okay.
Forget the actual name and definition of it, but
So it's like a highway kind of for like
wild
them to
animals
cut
for the
through,
wildlife,
whatever
yeah.
the case may
Are
be.
you saying Rogers has that?
yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Good. Anything else, John?
No, I was just going to ask that. So I'm good.
And spaceships.
And spaceships, yep.
Roundabout beautification.
Roundabout zip lines.
Okay, now I think we're getting out of hand.
A roundabout zip line, so you can get
To the middle.
zip.
Don't spend too much time on that.
Let's move on. Sorry, I digress.
So are we gonna prioritize any of that?
I've got a lot to work on. So this is going to be a part of it, and I'll try to, I don't know. Yeah, I'll think about it more. So I know that the athletic facility is pretty high on the priority list of what we need to figure out.
It's beyond high.
Beyond high. Yeah, it's
Every
like
day
spaceship
it's
high. So yeah, so I'll work on all of that with Marty.
Is it done yet?
He's close.
Okay. Very good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Area 21, park design, layout, and amenities discussion.
So, after we did the Elsie Stevens site visit, we were planning on doing another one. But obviously the nights are drawing in, so it's making it difficult to do that. We should have probably started this much earlier on in the process. We're at the stage with this, we've got time to develop the park, but we need to get designs and stuff done, and so we can get it out for bid to build it next year. So I figured I'd like you to come up with ideas for amenities, what you'd like to see in that park, and the idea is to just do it here rather than being on the site. So I pulled together some site maps of what of the area and what the neighbouring areas are like, and what the so it zooms out a little bit. So if I go on, thank you. We're looking for Commissioner's input on the initial design layout and amenities for the new neighbourhood park of what's called Area 21. That's off of 117th. It's 4 parcels made up from 2 parcels from Braeburn Trails 1 and Braeburn Trails 2, and Sundance Greens Park. There's a third area that hasn't been developed yet, so that will be added to this, but we were to come up with a concept plan for the whole area, and that's the area shown here. This is the 4 quadrants. The top 2 off 117th of Braeburn 1 and 2. The one to the left is in Sundance Greens. I think the Park Commission wanted to do something with this because the neighbourhoods are developing out there, and there are a lot of people there that would appreciate having a park, and I don't know that we want to wait till we get the 4th quadrant in play. So the idea was to pull something together early as part of a master plan that we could install straight away next year. So it's going to be a phased approach to this, just because of the way this is coming together.
How many acres?
It's about 10. Yes, 10 acres.
Good chunk of land.
Yeah. Yeah, I think each of those squares are 2.5 acres. So The first slide here shows you where it is. There's a power line easement going down the middle. So that has to be considered for what you're going to do with that area. And then blow it out a little bit further. This shows where the two Braeburn developments are. The Sundance Greens will be going here where the golf course is. And this is the other area that hasn't been developed yet. On the 113th, that's probably going to be, I don't know if I can move this. No, I'm making it bigger. There you go. 113th is probably going to be realigned, and a future commercial area would potentially go in this area here. So there's quite a lot of things going there. This area here is probably going to be developed, although there have been some other opportunities raised that I can't talk about just yet, but that might be something that we can use to develop. But let's assume that it's going to be homes at this stage. This area over here will probably be developed at some stage soon as homes as well. So there's a whole lot of homes in this area. Sundance Greens, Sundance Woods does have a small, I think that's about a 10-acre park there. 10 acres? No, it's probably smaller. It's probably 5, isn't it? Yeah, it's a 5-acre park there. But that's a neighbourhood park that serves just that neighbourhood. So to develop this area would make a lot of sense and help some of the congestion at that park. There is a comprehensive trail network in here, so you should be able to walk between the two parks.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask, because
Yeah.
I knew Sundance was further down.
Yeah. So there's a trail system that goes along Rush Creek Parkway and that cuts through underneath the power lines that will get to this area here.
Okay.
Is there any other parking there? Or is it strictly access only by walking?
There will be parking in this park area here that we're looking at, so you'll be able to drive and park in there.
Like 5 or 6?
21
stalls?
stalls.
21, thank you.
So the bottom left that's currently being used as a golf course, that's part of a development that just
Yeah.
still is the golf course today?
Yeah, it's still being used as a golf course. That golf course is going to be cut down to a 9-hole
Okay.
golf course, and the rest of it is going to be housing.
So next year you'd be working on that portion of the park?
We'll see how
Okay.
quickly that develops. At the
Okay.
moment, it's going slowly there because it's high-value homes
Sure,
that are
yeah.
going to go in there. So there's only,
So right now, we're just looking at the top half.
I think that we're looking at the whole thing as a concept where we put
Sure.
stuff in there,
Yeah.
but what we're looking at is what we want to put in the top half of it, and that makes sense for these homes.
Sure.
So you're saying you just got trail connections to them right now, but you're basically got a blank slate kind of right there.
There's
So
a
you
blank
just-
slate, yeah.
Okay. So you're wondering what kind of amenities would be inside that park?
Yeah, we need to know what
direction
facilities
they
we
wanna
want to
go.
put in there. That's kind of what I'm looking for at the
Yeah.
moment.
I'm going to pull up our amenities list.
What is it,
Ball
what
field,
is, Marty,
basketball
what's the
court.
yellow and the orange?
The orange is the
Is-
power line easement. The yellow is 113th with the realignment. The other yellow line there is 117th, and of course the north-south is Fernbrook.
The light yellow is existing roads, the darker yellow is a realignment.
Right, thank you.
Can you further explain what future commercial development would be?
We don't have any idea
Don't
what
know?
that.
Okay.
No, that's just in there. It's been looked at as potentially that. It's not specifically zoned out yet, but that's what we're expecting it to be.
Okay, like,
It's-
I guess what would be like defined as commercial, like what's an example of?
It could be restaurants. It could
Oh.
be that kind of thing.
Okay, gotcha.
Just talking about it though, like I know right off the bat, like the power line easement is also like that's the main trail for like, talking about snowmobiles. Like that's the main connector right there.
Yeah, that's a good
So
point to zip up that.
yeah, I was looking at the just kind of the slide you had before, where it kind of showed like the trail kind of zigzagging through that easement. I wondered if that might make more sense if that were like straight, and then you had like again that right of way to one side of that trail dedicated for that kind of access.
For sure. I mean,
Yeah.
the same kind of summer access we talked about in the past. If there's a medical in the park and they have to get there fast, rather than weaving through the neighborhood, they'd shoot right up that power line.
Yeah, I think on the I can't remember on the pool, there is an emergency access into the neighborhood from here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So they should be able to get to the park pretty quickly. Whenever we look at these developments, we always look at having at least 2 emergency access points.
Bigger ones that are kind of
Yeah.
like this, yeah. There, obviously there'll be like playgrounds, there'll be zip lines possibly, you know. I'm just thinking power line, zip line, things of that nature.
Can't you use a
Water
power line
line
for that?
park.
What's that? Nah, I mean,
Don't touch the ground.
not recommended.
High ropes course.
I'm thinking like irrigation. I know like I've seen other places where they've used a pond, put nice features around that pond, utilize that pond as like an irrigation for the park kind of thing. Is that something you're thinking like would come from a discussion like this?
Currently, Braben Trails is using their storm ponds for irrigation
Okay.
themselves, so we wouldn't. I don't think there would be enough supply there, so we would have to drill a well and do it that way
Sure,
on this
okay.
property. And in the past, we haven't really done a lot with irrigation because, generally speaking, you get good growth from just seed and letting it do its thing and go dormant and come back.
Sure.
But that's kind of been put back a little bit because the last couple of years we've had so much drought.
Yeah.
It's been difficult to get seed established, so there's a push to put more irrigation in these parks.
Yeah.
Irrigation is expensive, but you get a good product at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I would put a well here rather than use city water because irrigating parks puts a lot of strain on the water system. I'd rather have people using that water to for in their houses
Right.
rather than putting on a city park. So it's sort of like a water conservation effort as well.
So the water would just be, not like drinking fountains or anything, it would just be for irrigation in that,
Just irrigation,
in that
yeah.
situation,
Yeah.
sure.
Just pulling raw water from the
Yeah.
ground. Just
Yeah,
Putting
yeah.
it out. Okay. I just figured, like a park like this surrounded by the homes that it is, like a drought is not something I would want this park to experience, especially with the value that's around it. Some people, would want to use that, and dry grass is probably not their forte.
Yeah.
So.
And that's one of the things that is driving this push to irrigation is where we've got parks, say in Ione Gardens, where it's got people who watering their grass all around it, and then
Right.
there's the dead grass in the middle. So.
Yep.
Well, it's not as usable. You go there on a day it was a little wet overnight, and now your kids are muddy versus playing in the grass.
Well, it's more susceptible to fire if you're having people smoke out there too now. So I mean, we can tie it all back. I mean,
But we're going to have these nice cigarette butt holders.
they don't have to be big.
butt
They can
holders.
just be small little boxes on a fence underneath doggy bags. I mean, those things. They don't have to stick out like a sore thumb. But nonetheless, like I see people around this park, and what is that use? To the people who are aging out that don't have kids but they still want to enjoy it, I figured like a nice walking path around a nice pond that might have wildlife and a nice, design feature, something like that. Like that would be the driving piece for that group to come to this park to enjoy it as well. So just rolling through ideas in my head, guys.
We also have talked about putting pickleball over there. Is that still a possibility?
Everything's a possibility at this stage.
Everything.
So, yeah. Paul's going to be making some notes here. That's why I asked Paul to come.
Two more baseball diamonds. A nice soccer field area.
Can we chime in and come up as item
Yeah, you can come. You
We
can come
need
up
to
and
take
state your
public
name and
comments.
address and
Yeah,
some
we'll
input.
take comments.
Go ahead.
So my name's Eric Sevald, 11534 Brayburn Trail. So I'm a resident in that neighborhood, as I think maybe someone else here as well.
Perfect.
So I just had some ideas, kind of just listening to what you guys say. I'll just kind of spew it all out. I think a couple of the comments already made, I think like, obviously there's the power lines there. So I do have a question on whether that would impose any issues with what might be constructed. For example, if you put a playground structure right under them, is there going to be like static electricity issues or concerns even by parents or families to use the equipment.
Yeah.
We wouldn't generally put anything up in an easement anyway.
And that's the other part, right?
Yeah,
Just
so
trail.
we wouldn't put a structure in the easement, because if they had to get in there and do some work on the power lines, then they would have to tear that structure down.
Right.
So we would avoid that
It
anyway.
would mainly
Path
just
is
be
some-
used for trail. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, you could put the path in there because it's probably not as impactful. They could still drive on that
Exactly.
if they need those kind of things and offering right away. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And then I think the other thing that was mentioned is like walking trail in there, which I have no opposition to. But I think it should be noted too that there are a lot of walking trails kind of already built into the existing Brayburn neighborhood. So I also don't know how much of a draw they would be for someone to walk around there versus in their neighborhood trail. With the, trying to maintain kind of a snowmobiling option, like I certainly see that as a potentially a value in Dayton. I would be a little bit concerned if it ran right through the middle of this park, just for the concern, even if it's a winter activity, if the playground is, let's say, on the east and kids from the west are trying to access over and they are crossing this trail and there's snowmobilers going
Yeah.
across or something.
Perhaps
So
put a stop sign in or something.
or put the snow fence up like that. This is the dedicated
Sure.
trail. I mean,
right, and then the
Yeah.
X
Those
blocks
are-
access
yeah.
to the other side of the park,
Yeah.
Yeah.
unfortunately. And then you guys were talking about the like irrigation. I think probably as a resident around there, like I would probably aesthetically appreciate green grass over brown, but obviously that's all that nature can deal to you sometimes. And to the point of the well system, just a little insight into Brayburn, they do use the drainage ponds, but they are actually having to drill well
Yeah.
because of
Yeah, I've worked with them on
it
that.
ran dry
Yeah.
or
'Cause
something.
they wanted to hook up to city water in there to run their irrigation, and it's really not a feasible thing to do in that area from a city point of view. And Maple Grove don't allow that anyway with their municipal water.
Is that irrigation for homeowners or for like the common spaces?
I think there is a bit of both of,
Okay.
of that over there. I think some of the smaller homes have irrigation from the ponds, and I think
Okay.
the common areas definitely do, like around the park area and that. I'm not 100% sure of exactly how far that extends out.
Yeah, it kind of varies. I guess just back on my additional comments for the park, this is kind of a laundry list, but I think in general, at least what I would look at as something that, entertains all ages, all abilities, so those that are able-bodied and maybe disabled. And then potentially if there's a way to implement an all-seasons use, and then also with like appropriate aesthetics, obviously ones that are engaging for children and kids, but fit the aesthetics of the homes that are around it. Like, for example, not a city thing, but a neighborhood park that our community built it's like bright orange and blue, so it doesn't fit with the aesthetic of the neighborhood
Oh,
either.
sure, I see.
Colors,
I think I don't have kids currently, but will here in the future. So like I think I'm probably not the expert on this, but I've heard some people say like splash pad, obviously maybe a playground, things that I think are maybe things that inspire like creative thinking, problem solving, puzzles, or the like sensory features for kids with autism and such like that. And then from the adult side, pickleball is already mentioned. But even just making it maybe like an enjoyable place to socialize for parents that are there with their children. So like shaded areas next to the park or
Yeah, shaded
lounge
areas.
spaces next
Yeah,
to a
absolutely.
playground structure that make it just a little bit easier to enjoy. I threw out like other interesting different ideas. I've never seen these. I don't know if they would be used, but like a permanent cornhole boards for bags where you have a permanent board structure. You just have to bring your own bags. Same thing with like a can jam sort of like feature where it's just the barrel and you would have to bring your own frisbee, where it's kind of these adult featured games or maybe adolescent. And then I just put other things, bike racks with just the trails and the proximity to Elm Creek bike trails. I think that would be important to have. I put like food truck parking with safe and easy access. I know one of the parks on the other side of Sundance occasionally has a food truck there.
Yep.
That I think just on the street, but if there was like kind of a safer way to design that parking area where it could park and there could be ease of access to that, with that being a kind of a more common theme, and to add a little bit more entertainment to the space at times. And then the other thing was just like, whether it's a shelter that's general use or multi-purpose use as a warming house for winter activities or whatever for summer. I kind of would prioritize more lowly, like, or a lower priority on like sports fields in that area, just because 5 acres starts to get small, and then you're relying on the additional tentative 5. But maybe like some sort of multi-purpose play areas, grass areas, where you could use it for maybe skills development versus like we can play a soccer game here and have that sort of utilization. Plus, at these days and age, like this, the soccer field's going to have to be up to a certain standard to play a game on it. Same with a softball field, which takes a lot more maintenance, and those standards
They require a
continue
lot
to go
of
up.
parking too.
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of all I have on that. Yeah.
I appreciate
That's a
it.
lot, but-
Just so you're aware, we will we'll be pulling these concepts together, and then we will have an open house for the neighbourhood to come and take a look and see what they like, and add some more input there. So there will be a notice going out to the whole neighbourhood. Could you fill in one of these forms? Do you want to?
Sure, yeah. We're in the same neighborhood.
We're here, right? We're here.
That's good.
I'm Emily Jesser. I'm at 11508 Brayburn Trail, and again, I have just kind of a laundry list of things, but I know we're working with a designated amount of space. Echoing a lot of the things that Eric said, I would agree with the not a need for like a major athletic complex, but I think like a couple half basketball courts are things where you can easily do a pickup style games, have a soccer net, again, the half basketball courts, or a permanent area. I don't, this is just an idea, I don't even know if it exists, but like pickleball net, it doesn't necessarily have to be court, but a net that can be multifunctional to like, you could raise it up for volleyball and lower it for something else, or, that's just an idea as well. And I think like a picnic area or a green space where there is more like a open, congregation of sorts, maybe next to a park or a playground for kids. And dog waste stations are an absolute must, I think, with the high volume of pet owners that are around the area for sure. Anything else new that hasn't been said? And I think once we get the forms out to the neighbors too, we'll have you'll see the patterns of what people are asking for, I think, so it'll be a lot easier to make some of those decisions. But I know personally I would benefit more from closer athletic equipment access, not necessarily, like I said, full-on soccer fields or full-on
Association
basketball courts.
Type stuff.
Yeah, just something
Okay.
where you can, play a game of horse or something like
Where
that.
a couple kids in the neighborhood can join together.
Yeah, just where that it's a possibility. And I know as far as playground design, there's so many options. I think just for an example, in our little park that we have in the Brayburn Trails, there's like a permanent, it looks like a stand, like a restaurant stand or something. And like Eric was mentioning, things that encourage imaginative play would be a huge plus, I think, as well. But yeah, that's all I really have to add to the conversation.
That's great. Well, thank you
But
very
yeah,
much for
thank
coming
you.
in. Could you fill in one of those forms as well for me, please? And if you guys need any more information or whatever, you can always give me my email. Send me an email.
Definitely.
I'm Martin Farrell. My email is on the city website, so I'm more than happy to take your emails and any of your neighbours as well.
Marty, is this about 10 acres?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I had to do the math again there.
I just went with the number.
ago.
Started
Got my
with it.
socks
So.
on still. So I'm ahead of the game here.
Get that guy a sticky note.
All right. So I appreciate the input from the residents. What else do you guys have to put on this? where do we want to go with this? Paul's here. He's got a lot of information there, and I think we'll be working on some concepts pretty quick here because we have to get this out to bid early next year. So this is going to be priority to get this through, along with the next phase of LC Stevens. We've got some work to do on that, and the Ione Gardens park over there that needs some upgrades. So those are the 3 parks that we're working on next year.
What was the last one you said?
Ione Gardens, it's the new one off the River Road there. Ione Gardens, Cypress Cove. There's a joint neighbourhood park there that was originally going to be 2 homeowners association maintained parks, but one of them decided they weren't going to have a homeowners association, so rather than let half of it be maintained and half of it not, the city took it over. But there's a lot of work to do in there yet. So Paul's redesigning that. It's not going to be a major overhaul there. I think there's going to be some landscaping work and some irrigation work done in there.
I think there's a couple of things that we have to make sure that we don't neglect, and that is, especially for small children, is restrooms are vitally important, and shade.
Yeah.
Yep.
Shade.
Definitely shade.
We have a beautiful park at Rivers Bend, and we have a couple of very large trees, but I find that it's too far away from the park, from the playground, excuse me, and that has become a problem. You got to have those trees close to the playground, and they have to be 40 or 50 years old.
Yeah, that's the problem. We do put trees in the parks, and it takes a long time for them to.
I'm sure you can do that without a problem, Marty.
Yeah, I can put them in the microwave, grow them quick. You know. But there is other things that we can do with those areas. Like there's like some sail shades or stuff, and we do put in pavilions and stuff like over at Hayden Hills around the park there. There's a covered pavilion there that provides shade. So we are aware of those. I won't say that we got this right from the very get-go. We made some assumptions like the trees at Rivers Bend were going to be sufficient. Obviously they're not, but it's a learning process for us to go along. It's like the ADA compliance stuff. Right. We were lacking that at the start, but we've started incorporating that into all the parks one way or another, with musical elements that they can access easily, and the swing sets where you have the mother baby swing sets. So those things are coming into what we're doing. So we are aware of the ADA compliance. We started to make it more accessible with the rubber matting in there as well. We did that on Donahue Dells and Hayden Hills for the first time last year. So it's an ongoing process.
You're doing a great job. There's no doubt about that.
Thank you. But yeah, so I guess the next stage is probably for Paul to sketch some stuff up, bring them back to you guys, get some feedback from you.
Would it be appropriate to ask a couple questions?
No.
I
know you are.
All in favor?
Aye.
So thanks for having me. I was here mostly to listen and take notes, but I really appreciate the neighborhood feedback because ultimately those are the users. We have done some cool things in the most recent parks, River Hills, Hayden Hills, LC Stevens underway. I think it's important for you as the commission to understand what needs to be the same and what we want to do different in each of these neighborhood parks. I don't personally believe that every neighborhood park has to have exactly the same amenities because park trends change, wants and needs change. That doesn't mean that parks don't get updated in 25 or 30 years or new things don't get placed, but I think it's important for you as the commission to give good direction to staff on the must-haves versus the wants versus the never-agains. You know, if you've seen something in the parks that you don't want to do again, you know, we need to know that also. Neighborhood parks are generally not competitively used or scheduled, so we're not having designated soccer or t-ball practices in the neighborhood parks. That's not true in every community, but that's what Dayton has done. So when you talk about ball fields, dedicated ball fields, at Hayden Hills, for instance, we did a backstop, a small amount of egg lime, and there's a large open area that's kind of in the shape of a ball field, but it blends into other areas that you could play soccer or throw a frisbee or fly a kite. So that would be an important distinction to understand the difference for the neighbors. You know, you can certainly go have a pickup baseball game like I had when I was a kid, highly encouraged, but it's not a fenced, full dugout type ball
Yeah.
field. This is probably not the splash pad location. You know, that's a huge investment. That's probably at a community playfield, at a TBD location, but not there. The comment about socializing areas was one that caught my eye, and I don't know if you have any ideas about what that means, but, you know, is it tables grouped together, movable benches, shade would be an important part. We did that at Hayden. There's a nice shelter. At River Hills, there's a couple shelters scattered about for that specific purpose.
I mean, if you're asking, I don't know specifically. I just, like I said, I don't spend much time at like a playground park right now, but, you know, obviously I see people in our community and they're standing. And I think like shade was one thing, right? So you can enjoy it. I don't know what else that would mean. Maybe there's some interesting features or
Yeah, as a-
parents to engage
Is
more,
there-
some other kids are engaging.
Is there a way to put in like a fire pit that the community could gather around? Can you do that in neighborhood parks?
I think it's an
Well,
operational
how late are
issue.
parks
Fire
open?
department,
But there's a well there, right, Marty?
Yeah.
It's gonna be nice green grass.
And I think
Yeah.
why I mentioned that is like in Braeburn Trails, we have obviously one dedicated neighborhood park, but I don't know if there's any more that are being designated along that Braeburn, Braeburn 2. I'm not entirely sure, and I'm assuming that's maybe because they knew they dedicated this land
Yeah.
for a larger city park,
Yeah,
and kind of expecting, you know, us as a city to kind of get all the elements right.
yeah.
Where maybe in other parts of the community, there's other smaller parks to be able to utilize, whereas in this part of the Dayton community, there isn't, or won't be as much at this time.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. What, you know, why these four parts are put together. The city got these four areas this way. This was a dedication, and we wanted to put something together there so it's a bigger area of land to use rather than just four small 2.5 acre neighborhood parks. So this makes it more of a community, communal park.
Marty, for bidding on this, you said spring of 2024. Are we looking to bid all 4 parcels here or just the top 2?
Whatever we're going to be developing, so it may be the top 2. It depends what happens with Sundance. We will put the whole package together and do it as alternates, I would imagine, Paul.
Well, you don't control the land on the south half, so
Well, there's, yeah,
you can't build on something that you don't actually control.
but we could still get
so-
the put it in the bid package just for getting pricing for the bigger picture. We could talk about
Maybe.
that.
Follow-up question is, so we go out to bid, we'll just say hypothetically for the top 2. When
Yep.
would we be looking at breaking ground? 2025?
No,
Fall of
2024.
2024.
Next year. This is all geared for next year.
Okay.
All of the 3 projects that I spoke about earlier, they're all for next year.
Okay.
The comment about, you know, the land that we control, this park is at that intersection for that very reason, that we could get a little bit of park dedication from each developer. The shape of the lower half is not 100% set in stone. John, is there a development application in for the southeast corner?
No.
Okay. So both the southeast and the southwest corner shape could be altered. It could be bigger, smaller, you know, depending on what we come up with, some concept plans, and what type of amenities you want in there. The north half is platted, and those are the parcels that are park as of now. The easement isn't going away. We can't build within the easement. We shouldn't build anything other than trails. You can have open play fields. You know, the power lines are way up in the air. There are 2 power poles that will impact what we can do and work around in that area. And they need access, but the trail is actually a benefit to them, whether it sweeps back and forth around the poles or goes in a straight line on both sides for the snowmobile. That's an easy change to make.
Marty, question. When are we going to have the residents come forth with their ideas versus sending Paul with his sketch pad into the corner?
Well, we'll have Paul do a basic layout on there, and then after we get that, we should probably do it in February.
Okay. Mark your calendars.
So those are the types of things that, ultimately we need to be thinking about. I'm really curious about kind of the must-haves in each park. Typically, we do put at least a half basketball court, often with more than one goal, so that you can play a game on opposite ends, if you will, but it's not, 50 by 80 or whatever a typical basketball is. If pickleball continues the popularity that it's currently experiencing, and it makes sense to put a couple courts in each park. A lot of people are using it, and it's a fun game that I enjoy playing, but that's another decision. Do you do 2 in every neighborhood park, or do you do them in some of the parks and then put bigger complexes in another? Would you ever light
Certain
it?
size might dictate what kind of can be in there too, if you're over 2.5, 5, whatever.
Correct, yep. 2 courts is great. 1 is barely enough, because then you get competition for it. There's always somebody waiting on a nice summer evening. If you want to have leagues or something, you really need 4 to 8, and lighted would be ideal, but maybe that's a community playfield type of amenity. Yeah. The playground itself, just for the residents here, that's a completely different design decision that will need input. We try to do something different in each park, but it'll have both able-bodied and handicap accessible elements. It'll have swings and towers and slides and all of that, but the exact configuration is TBD.
And I've seen, I think you mentioned the sail shades, I've seen that as an option that can go over an entire, it's in pieces, but at least it breaks up
Yeah.
direct exposure.
This is a wide open site with the exception of some trees on the southwest corner where the golf course is. So, we're going to have to plant them early and wait for them to grow. We could possibly work around some of the existing trees on the golf course.
Preserve them if you can. Would be great.
Yeah.
Kind of historic
Irrigational
trees.
Right. But that's probably the
gathering areas.
the last phase to be constructed.
And that's
so,
fine. They'll grow bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, playgrounds are typically one of the first things you want to put in, because that's what a lot of the residents want. But if you want to put the playground in amongst the trees, it's on the southwest corner. So, and those are some of the options that we can explore through the conceptual design process.
We've done playgrounds that kind of split up by different age groups as well. So even if you tier it all around, social gathering area in the center.
So we do need good input on, what every park should have. Not every park has had parking. There's a debate as to whether it even should. Parking lots are expensive, and, if it's not being used for competitive events, practices, games, you don't have that many people coming to it at one time. We do have the option to have the parking up on the north side within that easement, so easy street access. Hayden Hills, it has it parallel parking on the south side.
But if ice rink and skating ends up happening here, winter time, people are gonna want to drive to that location versus wanting to walk from the other. So I
Walk
figure
over with your
it's
skates.
still an element that I feel needs to be incorporated. It's just the what is the size that is the perfect size for it. So
And the grandparents watching the kids for the day. Take them to the park.
exactly,
on a
it's
hot day.
things of
Drive
that
them
nature.
over there.
But yeah, I don't want to add any more traffic to the area by having it big enough for an association to hold an event. It's tough enough for people coming in trying to navigate through the neighborhoods, and then it's even tougher for the residents that live there to be when is this going to stop? Some stuff goes till 10 p.m. at night, and it can just be.
And I think that's one of the
Not a
reasons why
destination
CDAA want a bigger athletic complex, and
Yeah.
that's why we're aiming towards that, because they don't like to be having competitions
Yeah,
in neighborhoods.
nuisance tag
Yeah,
comes along
it's
with-
an annoyance
with-
for the neighbors,
yeah.
and it's difficult for
And I
people
get
to
that,
navigate
yeah,
that.
I get that.
Yeah.
Just an example, when I was the park planner for the city of Maple Grove, a really long time ago, their standard was 25 stalls, plus or minus. It should have been 8 to 10. They did use some of their parks for competitive practices or scheduled games. It made sense to have, 20, 25 then. If it's just your neighborhood park without scheduled activities, 8 to 10 is great plenty.
I think the competitive, or I mean, the sports scene has changed a good deal. It used to be, back in the day, you had small parks, community, neighborhood parks that would, they would conduct the practices and whatnot. But now people are asking, we want one complex to do the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm on both sides of that fence because I really like the atmosphere that nightly practice creates for the neighborhood. But some neighbors, maybe childless couples, might balk at the activity and the parking and everything. But it's kind of a catch-22 because it's a lot of fun to watch the kids out there. It makes it convenient for parents if they can practice near their home, but at the same time, that takes more space for the park. And, Dayton has made, at this point, the CDAA has made the decision not to use the neighborhood parks, and until that decision changes, we won't put in, fully fenced, fully playable surfacing. So.
Right. Very good. Where do we go from here?
So is the question to, try to standardize something like each park is going to come up with, or each park that comes in lands in front of the park commission for, hey, this is what future build out is, like we're going to start with this and then grow or take away from this set list kind of things.
I guess that would be the biggest question as we start to develop concepts is what do you have to have in this park, in PSA 21? Name to BD. I don't know that we have a name picked out. It'll be.
Is that something like the commission thinks like?
It was kind of mentioned at the top of this meeting too. I
Yeah.
think it's a good thing to have, and then from there, okay, we got this in every park.
Right.
What do we add? Like,
So
we don't have to mention garbage cans because we're going to put them in.
Do we have, and we don't have something like that right now.
I don't think we do. We have a big list of every amenity that we can put in, but that's really more of the extras versus what we could assume is going to be in a
You're
park.
focus on a core, right?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Who else does stuff like that? Is like Maple Grove, does Osseo? I mean, even if they got something like that, like something that like we could adopt and then just say like, hey, makes sense, but we would see ourselves doing something like this. Just like instead of looking at a blank slate, going like, well, maybe, or how other parks commissions
reach
come
out
up
to
with
another
their
Core
formations, how
conveniences.
they, like things change in 20 years. How do you go about changing that list? Things of that nature. Like I'm just trying to give direction. Maybe I'm causing more confusion than anything. I don't know.
Makes sense.
I think it would be a good thing to have.
Marty, didn't a former commissioner put together a program like that?
Yeah, that was you're talking about what we have in existing parks, that inventory type thing?
Right, right.
Yeah, there is an inventory that David Klein pulled together, I
I
think.
think so.
Yeah, there is something along those lines that I can find.
And that's different than this final
Yeah.
park commission
It
park
was
amenities.
part of the same
Okay.
deal. But we just focused on that part of it. But there is a list of stuff that we have existing in Dayton parks, plus what is existing in nearby parks as well. What's in the Eastman Nature Centre? What's in Donny Galloway Park and that kind of thing. So there's an inventory of those kind of
So
things.
there's data out there that
Yeah,
the commission
we
could
do have
pull
some
in
data,
and
yeah.
say like,
And I would caution against making it too rigid.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You could say court surfaces, and that could be pickleball in one, or it could be basketball in another. I personally think that you need to have basketball in most every neighborhood park. That's just my personal preference as a park designer. I think you need shelters. You certainly need a playground, walking trails, picnic areas. You know, there are things that are very simple to add. What isn't simple is, you know, a golf green. Well, this, at Hayden Hills, we did a golf green because it was a former
Pay
golf
homage
course.
to
Well,
it,
this is
yeah.
a former golf course, but we probably don't need another golf green, so.
No.
I think it'd be.
And that was a big debate as to whether there should be a golf green, and I was shocked when the council said, yep, we'll put it in. So,
It'd be interesting to, I don't know how you do this, if you could inventory what we've got out there as parks and how much people do use the basketball court, how much
was
people
wondering
do
that, yeah.
use the pickleball courts, how much people do use, you know, the ball field.
You got a Parks and Rec person that can.
I know, I was thinking, okay,
Send her to a park.
So the park for a day?
you can be out there in January, okay?
January.
I bet you the pickleball doesn't get used a lot
Yeah.
in January.
Crazy.
I don't think much.
Flood it for skating.
But I agree, like, to your
Well-
point, the surface is, like, don't say, like, it has to be a basketball court. It doesn't have to be a pickleball. It just has to be a surface usable for what?
Yeah, and I was envisioning that list being more small, like garbage cans, shade, you know.
Yeah.
General
You know,
amenities.
stuff like, yeah. But I think that would be great to include, though. I mean, you're going to want some kind of surface, probably. But allow for exceptions, absolutely.
And maybe it's a must, typical, and a wish, I mean, there's
Optional.
ways to
If
break
we
that
can.
into
Parks,
three.
park
Yeah, so
amenities.
I could maybe even take a stab at that,
Or
based
unique.
on my experience.
That would be great.
So, and adding to the must, I think a bath, like a restroom area for sure, since there are many
Mhm.
young families and maybe the run back home.
Yeah.
I was
And that
gonna
would
ask.
be like a porta potty probably in a park like this, because
Well,
it's not
something
going to
we
have
generally do.
sewer.
We were talking about some other options today that maybe
Like
are more permanent structures.
Kinda
That's
like
where
what-
I was kind of gonna ask.
Yeah,
was if
Three
this would
Rivers
be-
Park District use them, and
Yeah.
If this would be a
Visible.
suitable spot for like a more permanent structure
Yeah.
for, you know, people that,
yeah.
it's a pain in the butt to change a baby's diaper in a porta potty.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's like where my thought first goes
Yep.
to, is
Yeah, yeah.
just like, how do you manage that in the porta potty? So it's like more of a permanent structure kind of
And
thing.
yeah, whether that's, you know,
Changing
plumbed in
station
or
in the
some
men's
kind
room.
of chemical composting type scenario, I don't know, but it depends on
Maybe
what we've
that
got available
falls-
at that park.
Maybe that falls into that category of like, if we cans, or, you know, since it's 10 acre, we say like it should have a permanent structure. I think this is more like directed towards you guys, how you want to take it as far as, you know, 10 acre park requires a permanent structure, or, you know, a 5 acre park requires, I don't know, like, just kind of where I think the conversation heads for that.
I think we
park
can-
packages.
Yeah.
We can hash that out. And
Yeah.
I think it'd be good if Paul has a stab at it first and brings something to us, and then that gives us a starting point, and we can
Mhm.
add and change that
Yep.
as we like. But I think it'd be good to have a starting point.
Very good.
Thanks, Paul.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes Area 21. It sounds, that
I know, I like
sounds like something,
30 more and
Just
we'll be at
30
51.
away.
Yep.
Can we put that on the residents board as well? When they come in, choose a name, pick a name, drop a name off?
I think it should be the Doug Baines Memorial Park.
I tried.
there you go.
No, for sure we could do something like that, yeah.
Anything else we need to discuss tonight?
Next Park Commission meeting is
January
2nd.
Fantastic.
If you're not hungover, it'd be good.
Oh, yeah.
At that meeting, that'll be the January 2nd
Yeah, it's
meeting,
math
so
problem.
elections, appointments will be made at that meeting. And for the February meeting, we would have everybody lined up and
We should have everybody, yeah. Well, there'll be other visits at January 2nd stuff, January 2nd meeting, so I'll pull the agenda together for that and let you know what it is. It'd probably be a pretty busy meeting, I'd expect. We've got 3 parks to push through and stuff, and Paul's going to be busy over Christmas. So don't expect Santa to come to you.
You'll have a plat too.
A plat too?
Yeah, a plat with a trail.
There you go. So happening.
Yeah.
Ooh, a sneak peek.
Very good.
Oh, boy.
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
I.
You have no choice in the matter. Thanks, everybody. Merry Christmas to you all.